Hey everyone, welcome back to Build Shefa, the show where we explore how bold thinkers in real estate, business, and wellness are driving ROI through intentional design, leadership, and strategy. I'm your host, Liat Siegel, and today's guest, Bill Peebles, is a powerhouse of transformational leadership and growth strategy. William is the CEO of HumanRx Wellness and a seasoned executive with an impressive track record of scaling high-growth companies across healthcare, financial services, and real estate. He's led multi-million-dollar capital raises, orchestrated M&A deals, and built market-leading organizations that are as operationally sound as they are visionary. What really stands out about Bill is how he blends data-driven decision-making with an instinct for innovation, developing proprietary SaaS and healthcare solutions, building nationwide infrastructure, and optimizing team performance from inside out. In today's episode, we're diving into what it really takes to lead at scale, the future of integrated health and real estate ventures, and how vision-driven strategy can transform not just a company's bottom line, but its impact on the world. Let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining us, Bill.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So tell us a little bit about your background. What pulled you into what you do right now? And I always love to ask, but what made you stay? What made you keep the course and continue doing what you're doing?
Well, I'll tell you, I actually kind of fell into healthcare. I kind of met at the intersection of healthcare and investment banking, essentially. So first off, I'm the founder of HumanRx Wellness, which is a telehealth platform that was built to be hyper-focused on pricing strategy and access to the GLP-1 medications out there. That was really kind of a passion project of mine, and so I wanted to build a platform that was easily accessible to many folks. It had some very transparent fixed rate pricing around those medications. I'm also CEO and in kind of an advisory role to a company called MindSync. It's an AI native EHR platform for post-acute care, skilled nursing facilities, long-term care, memory care units, and the like. And really, I've just spent the last decade of my life, building in healthcare and wellness and working kind of arm in arm with private equity. So I'm excited that we're going to talk today about how systems in general around healthcare rolled into real estate as well, really can be rethought from the ground up. So we can use what we know, from market analysis, what we can learn from the past. We can build something new, with intelligence, empathy, with looking for the best outcome, the best results, the best return on investment through those actions.
Amazing. You said you're building some physical locations right now for healthcare. Is that what that is?
Well, I'm not building, I'm advising. I have a client who is in the skilled nursing facility. They're looking for some owned real estate to build another facility. Typically, these facilities have 400 to 800 beds. This particular unit, this investor, they're looking out on the West Coast. So I'm advising them now of looking for locations. So if you look back at my history, my career, I was in finance for many, many years. And in the economic downturn in 2007 and 8, I pivoted. I did not want to relocate to the West Coast or East Coast. I'm in Austin, Texas. Had small kids at that time. Didn't want to relocate, make such a drastic move. So I took a package. Probably a bad time to take a package in the economic downturn. But as it turned out, the government, the FDIC specifically through the Treasury Department, was going through some banking collapses. They needed some people to come in and help them resolve those institutions. I was at the right place, the right time, was able to build a consulting company to help the FDIC and the Treasury Department liquidate and restructure some of these banks, particularly some of the assets that were inside of those banks. So largely, those assets are real estate based. And so working with those owners and operators that owned those facilities, that had a loan tied to those facilities at the failed bank, I helped them restructure their notes rather than those notes be sold in a big pool. And ultimately, we're returning a 3, 4, 5, sometimes tenfold return to the receivership estate, which is the federal government, just a fancy way of saying that, rather than having those loans packaged up and sold to the market. And that's kind of a twofold effect, right? Is it you're saving money for the taxpayers by working with those guarantors and those owners of those notes rather than having them sold off. But you're also drastically improving the balance sheet of those companies at a time when they desperately needed it by giving them a discount and working with those owners, operators, and guarantors. We're able to improve their business structure. I mean, it's a drastic impact to their balance sheet. And so you're giving a lot of companies at that time a second breath, a second opportunity at living where many of those would have likely failed. And so you're taking that out of the community. So for me, it made sense. It just made sense that we should dig in and try to restructure a lot of that. Those kind of conversations led me to getting into healthcare because I found owners and operators of healthcare companies, whether that be skilled nursing or men's wellness or female health. They had clinics, and just like anybody else, they have loans tied to that, whether it's securitized against the collateralized against the asset, the real estate asset, or they have a working capital loan to pay their staff and buy inventory and whatnot. So by coming in, helping those folks kind of clean up their balance sheet and reposition their balance sheet for strong success while still returning a much better return to the receivership estate by working with those individuals, everybody wins. And so you develop some very tight relationships with those owners of those companies. And through that process, you meet folks, and that's how I fell into healthcare. There was a company, largest men's wellness brick and mortar location around the country. They needed a CFO to come in, help them get better positioned to execute a liquidity event, a transaction, and exit the business. It took me about 3+ years to get that worked out, working with the executive team and the founder. And that company, we exited that business in 21. During that time, I was recruited by another private equity group called Redbud Brands. They're the people behind Skinny Pop Popcorn, Sweet Leaf Tea. They had a hand in some of the Deep Eddy vodka growth. They had they're in the Waterloo sparkling soda line. They had a big investment in C4 Energy, and they really wanted to make a push since they were focused on consumer. They have primarily they're a CPG brand. They wanted to pivot into a telehealth access for healthcare, specifically as it relates to men's hormone replacement therapy and women's hormone replacement therapy. So I moved from Dallas to Austin. That was in 21. And alongside another co-founder with Redbud behind us, we built a company called Wellcore. That company was sold in 24 to a vertical partner. It's still in existence today. You can find it at teamwellcore.com. It focuses on men's and women's health. They're in from the GLP-1s all through hormone replacement therapy and other modes. Thriving company, great subscriber base. I would tell anybody, if you're looking for healthcare specifically related to hormone replacement therapy, look to those guys. They do a fantastic job. The new owners are fantastic. Once that deal was done, I moved on and built HumanRx, and I really built that as like I said earlier, as a passion project, really to bring, for lack of a better word, as much equity as you can to a cash pay service where the underlying meds are still pretty expensive to have compounded and whatnot. But I wanted to really drive that price down and get to a place that most folks could afford. And so that's what took me into that business. That business, I was tendered an LOI here recently to acquire my subscriber base. So as working, through that handoff of subscriber base and transaction, I was approached by a company called MindSync. MindSync is really a fantastic organization. The founder of that organization is a Brain Institute fellow out of San Francisco, UC San Francisco, an esteemed group on the board and advisory roles. Fantastic. We were able to bring in a CTO co-founder who is brilliant, focused on AI technology. And we brought in a COO who has existing relationships in skilled nursing facilities, long-term care, memory care units, and has built software before to improve on the outcomes of folks that are in those facilities. So it's, in this role advising MindSync, and I'm in an acting CEO role for those guys, helping them raise capital and whatnot. Really, the founder has a deeply personal connection to memory care facilities and the treatment thereof, as well as all facets of that arena, how the caregivers, the family members are communicated to, what does the outcome look like for the patient, what changes, whether it be medically or behaviorally or just physical changes, how is that communicated and kept? And so the brainchild was really of that founder that said, we need to bring AI to the center of this. And so I'm helping them build that. So it's been really a blast. Along that way, I've met owners of these facilities, additional owners. And so it's opened up really a whole new scope into what is, what does equity in healthcare, look like? And so, when you look at just the technology aspect of healthcare, technology can either, scale biasness or it can dismantle it, right? I mean, it can break it down. And so when any kind of tech stack in healthcare is really built without equity in mind, right? The outcome that's equal for everybody, right? We want to give the best level of care. It ends up only amplifying whatever existing gaps exist. But when it's done right, like what MindSync is building with AI, and it's being trained on diverse inputs, being designed for accessibility, you build that, and it becomes a force multiplier for closing all of those gaps that exist. So it's truly exciting to see that come to fruition. I mean, AI is the new Wild West, right? It's a new frontier. It's exciting. Everybody wants to jump in. But the real data information that comes from that is boundless. And that does tie in not only to the healthcare and the outcome of the patients and the folks that are really the recipient of all those. It really boils back down into the amount of data that it can inform the owners of those facilities, from predictive time for stays to their billing, it being very accurate. Many of those people that are in those facilities are on Medicare, Medicaid. That compliance with the billing portion is arduous at best, and so AI at the cornerstone of that not only affects better outcomes for the patients and for the owners, but it also helps the healthcare workers that are in those facilities. So there's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of redundancy, a lot of stress that's placed on those folks, and when those people tend to get to their limit, they leave. And a majority of those where it's proliferated is in rural areas where there's healthcare droughts already. And so when you can make those jobs easier, make the outcome more predictable, and you have real insights on that data, everybody wins. You fold in a telehealth aspect, and you begin to really rapidly close the gap in what we would say is a healthcare desert in an area where healthcare just isn't as prevalent. And so, I'm excited from a high level view to bring all this in focus, because it does close those gaps that currently exist. And access shouldn't be a zip code lottery for anybody, right? I mean, whether you're in rural Texas or you're in downtown Manhattan, you should have access to smart, efficient, dignified care. And so it's great to see these developments come online. So it's an exciting time. I've got lots of things moving. It's a fantastic time in healthcare and technology.
Yeah, I mean, you're really smoothing out all those gaps. My father-in-law was in a nursing care facility. He had a stroke, and it was more of a rehab. And were so many different options available, but none of them could provide the level of care that he really needed. And so, and at the end of that, when he was discharged, he wasn't provided with the proper plan. So he ended up going backwards from all of the momentum forward that he had at the facility. And so I love that you're doing that. I love that you're taking into consideration also that burnout aspect of the nursing staff or the people that are taking care of the patients, from how the patients feel to how the staff is, because it all makes a huge impact on the outcome for the patient.
Right.
So
100%.
And I see that as well in terms of how the space is set up for them as well, in the layout, in the design, the aesthetics of it, because from my perspective, it all makes a huge impact in the outcome of their care. Are you seeing that as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. What probably I would say about 20 years ago, which in the technology world is, dinosaur years. But if you look at where about 20 years ago, a lot of these companies that owned several locations, skilled nursing, long-term care, memory care units, assisted living, whatever it may be, they kind of had I like to call it a feng shui movement, right? As they started, if you remember back a long time ago, when I was very young, you'd go into a nursing facility and it just had a bad connotation. It felt, it wasn't bright and light and cheery, and about 20 years ago, these companies got wise that, why should these places be dark, depressing, not laid out well, loud, kind of facilities. And they really put a lot of thought into crafting those facilities, really with the mental wellness of the patients and the tenants really at the core of that. They've only gotten better over the years. And my grandmother, before she passed, was in an assisted living facility where she had her own apartment, about 1,000 square foot apartment with a little kitchenette and a bedroom and a living room. And, it was bright and light, and they had common facilities where everybody could gather. So it didn't feel like a place that you were remanded to live out the remainder of your years. It was really a place developed to keep you cheery and give you options to still engage on a social level and do social outings. And regular dinner times were like walking into a restaurant, and so those types of aesthetic thoughtfulness has just continued to evolve. And today these type of facilities are really on the cutting edge of keeping mental health of these tenants and these patients at the core of what they do. Now, the one thing that is still lacking is marrying that with an electronic health record that is intuitive and smart and can keep up with that. I look at it as kind of a twofold. You look at these units, these facilities, And now that they're really making the turn to being just state of the art, beautiful locations, but the technology underlying there that still manages the care for those patients and reports that care is still, it's super old and it hasn't come along. It's clunky. Oftentimes you'll find the programs that they're being run in these facilities, the staff is really only utilizing, less than 10% by a far cry, probably closer to 5% of the capability of the software, because it's just too clunky and it doesn't work well. And that ends up, potentially laying the groundwork for a bad outcome for a patient. And so when you look at these beautiful facilities, you think, man, that they should be matched with beautiful technology, and with the onset of AI, there's no reason that shouldn't be the case. So that's what we're building currently, is to really marry that technology with those beautiful facilities, and not only having an aesthetically pleasing facility, but also a tech environment that aids those healthcare workers, aids the doctors, aids the nurses, and really informs outcomes for patients. And obviously, it's not going to replace doctors or nurses. It's not designed to, but it's designed to be a very powerful tool for them. For instance, if you're uploading medications for a new patient, and the notes in the system typically are kind of all over the board, and it's left up to that nurse to go in and chart and put those notes in. But sometimes language issues can be a barrier. Dialect could be just the style, just how somebody stylistically approaches putting in manual notes. What if you had the AI prompt you on the most common notes relative to that patient? If you're making a note on blood pressure, you're making a note on behavioral, you're making a note on if there was a physical issue that came up from a fall, maybe, and it predicts that. So all of those notes across the enterprise all look similar. They're in the similar cadence and the similar tone, and so AI begins to read that, and it may start offering outcomes like, have you noticed Joe hasn't been sleeping in the last 3 days? His behavioral disposition has eroded. He had a fall. His blood pressure's been up, and I see that we introduced a new medicine 30 days ago. We may want to look at the dosage or the dosing schedule. We may want to look at another medication at all. It may have no corollary, but it brings up the opportunity to examine that, and that informs a better outcome for that patient.
I mean, that's so powerful. It comes back down to systems, doesn't it? Systems.
Absolutely.
And streamlining the whole process from the entire experience of the patient to how they're treated. That system provides, I would say, continuity of continuity of care and consistency.
Sure.
I think we discussed last time in our conversations before that even if a dosage maybe was put in incorrectly,
That's correct.
Right? That then could prompt and say, hey, something's wrong here, and then have them look into it further.
That's exactly right. I mean, MindSync is creating at the core of the operating system. It doesn't make any assumptions that every user or person touched with that has the same literacy and access or background. There's embedded contextual logic that adapts to all the different needs, right? And whether you're a first-time caregiver or you're an expert in skilled nursing, it brings it together, and it allows that ecosystem to be user-friendly for everybody. But also when we talk about caregivers, think about these nurses oftentimes are overworked, and there's so much charting that goes on. They may have every intention of picking up that phone and calling the caregiver at home or the family members and updating them on medication changes or a physical attribute change or whatever the case may be. And sometimes that gets missed. And the caregiver only finds out about it if they call up there and they specifically ask, or they show up to the facility and they learn that these changes have taken place and they ask. With MindSync at the core of the new EHR being developed, it will send those notifications to whomever has been authorized to receive them. And it may prompt them to go into the portal where they go into a secured HIPAA compliant portal and go in and they can read those notes. They have the open communication. They can respond right back to the caregivers in the facility. So it opens up that line of communication, right? There's so many opportunities with the onset of AI to enhance user experience, to enhance caregiver experience, patient outcomes. But if you take a moment and step back and you think about who owns these facilities, what this technology can provide for them, right? It can start predicting across all of their facilities the length of stay, the type of high touch requirement, and documentation that has to be compliant. That oftentimes, the way billing works in that environment, particularly when you're dealing with Medicaid, Medicare, your billing comes in one big lump, and you have to be able to defend it or add to it, and having the real time data and all the AI and information that is flowed through can move right into billing, and we can go right back and point exactly to where that point of access occurred for that point of billing. But it informs things that we may not see from the outside because it is so decentralized across so many units. Maybe we start seeing patterns in age, familial history, medications relative to people that have had falls, or people that their behavioral issues tend to decline, or perhaps that they become better. Their physical, we note the physical attributes have improved, that their mental health has improved, their just general disposition is better. And then we can go in and we can look across the spectrum at what kind of medications have been introduced. Is there a history with a particular nurse? Are we seeing better outcomes or worse outcomes? It allows us to really gain insights that we haven't had the ability to garner before. So I mean, it's a game changer. And that informs the value of that business as well, right? So when we talk about ROI, when you have a facility that is just running on all cylinders, and your staff is happy and not overworked, and they feel like they're checking those boxes every day, because a nurse comes in every day with a different schedule, and they have to look at what items they must do today for that patient. Well, if AI was an assistant to them, so to speak, they can run those notes out to the caregiver. They can push them out to the portal. They can notify the caregiver to go into the portal to find those notes. It summarizes a lot of what has occurred, high point level, and allows that nurse then to go in and talk to that patient, caregiver, or attending physician, and share those. And so that really, at the end of the day, when you have that level of care, that kind of succinctness, that kind of engagement, that comes back to the bottom line of that business, because we have to remember that it's still business, right? And so that they're looking at a return for their shareholders. And when you are running at the absolute optimum speed and performance, that enhances that value of that business. And so the implications are across so many facets, and that's the exciting part of it, because you're delivering better outcomes. You're really delivering equity for the provider, right? You're better, data equity equals better care for the patient, right? And so and all of that just informs the bottom line of that business, and it is a business at the end of the day. And so that's the exciting proposition. We think we can bring value across all points of healthcare and real estate.
100%. I mean, it's not only providing another tool in the tool belt of the physicians, the people that are working with the patients day to day, but also, like you had mentioned with the billing, that I could see insurance, well, they would probably always find a way around it, but I could see that, they're always giving a hard time for billing for services. And this could just streamline and help to get those bills paid for. And so any client that I would work with, I would, immediately tell them that this is a service, this is a technology that they need to integrate, because what we do is all ROI driven design. And we don't just inform about the aesthetics, but also the technology and the systemization of the business as well.
That's right. 100%. 100%. It's a game changer. It's a total game changer out there. And so, I'm super excited to be part of it. I'm super excited to tell the story every time I'm on the phone with an investor. Everybody gets excited about it because, it's right at our fingertips, and we're currently in development of the software. Some phases we are getting ready to start beta testing, and then we'll do bolt-ons, and we'll roll that out in every aspect of a managed care facility, and we can start measuring the ROI hopefully as soon as just a couple of months down the road.
Wow, that's fascinating. I am curious, with all of the different things that you have built over the years, was there like a specific turning point in your career that really changed the way that you led, that you operate, that you see ROI?
I'll use a great example because you just brought up insurance. I'll tell you, insurance has always been the evil, empire out there. But I got to tell you, what I have learned with dealing with payers is that, it's people like you and I sitting behind the computer making the determination. And oftentimes those folks, the issues that cause for pushback typically are in the ambiguity area, where it's not 100% clear. And rather than just paying that, sitting out the door, they want clarity on that. They want to make sure the current procedural terminology, the CPT codes, are correct. And, at the end of the day, people say they're in the business of denying claims. I would disagree with that. I think they're in the business of approving claims that are clear, and it shows the continuity of care is there, the level of care is there, it was warranted, and it's well documented. And that has implications from the patient's health all the way to the quality of care given at the facility. So, again, the point I'm making there is that for me, I looked at it as changing my mind when I got into healthcare, because I came into it with that feeling in mind that these payers, they're there to deny claims. And certainly we've had some rubs over the years, but really what it taught me was that people just want the information. They want it to be documented. They want it to be irrefutably, you can point back to that moment in time. And I understand that because, again, insurance is a business. And so it became crystal clear to me that the quality of that data set has to be greatly improved. And oftentimes, though, not to say that caregivers or physicians in these facilities aren't doing their job. A lot of times, what we found is the technology that they're leaning on to go pull those codes and those EHRs and drop those notes in. It's antiquated at best, and there's not a one size fits all. And so most of these facilities use a system that's way too robust for what they need, and they're paying an arm and a leg for it, and they're stretched to their max, and they're still having to do redundant manual tasks, and they miss stuff, or they don't document as well as they should, or there was no AI and it didn't draw back and say, maybe you don't use this CPT code for this because you only visited with this patient for 20 minutes and this is a billing code for at least a 30-minute. And so when you look back across the patient history, some of these payers, they'll catch that and they'll kick it back. Well, bringing a clear data set to the party is to inform everybody and to inform any kind of defensible position is a game changer. So for me, just really, it changed my mind on how healthcare, how everybody integrates, and it also eliminated some very large gaps and disparities and the disproportionate equity, if you will, or lack thereof in the system. So, I became much more empathetic and sympathetic once I stepped into healthcare than I was. I was probably more of a cynic before. And now, I see all the good that can come and all the things that were broken. And there's still so many out there. The opportunity to fix that system is a boundless opportunity. And so that's the kind of stuff that motivates me. I really never thought you would, if you asked me, 10 or 11 years ago, would I become a passionate advocate for all things related to healthcare. Here I am today to tell you I am, and so it's been a bit of a remarkable change for me.
Wow. Your journey is fascinating, and I really feel that there's a lot of passion behind what you do. I'm curious if they're in 1 to 3 words. If you could say what your impact, what your mission, what your legacy would be with everything that you're working on, how would it be summed up in 1 to 3 words?
I would say probably where I sit today. I would want someone to look back and say, you know what he did? He built platforms that reached the underserved. He identified equity, meaning cultural relevance to healthcare outcomes. And then I would hope people would say he's always been consistent, which has built trust. Consistency does build trust. That's how I would like to be remembered. I think that if I had an opportunity to have a legacy in the business world, those are the things, right? Just reaching the underserved population, bringing equity relative to the cultural relevance and healthcare specifically, and then being very trustworthy. I think those are the three things that I would hope my legacy instills.
Wow, amazing. If there was one question you wish I would have asked you, what would that be?
That's a good question, Liat. One question that you haven't asked me that I wish you had.
Anything that you want the world to know about who you are and the impact.
Well, I would tell you, have a servant heart, right? What leads you to do things you do? And I would say ultimately from family and my personal life to work in my business life and then my spiritual life, I would say lead everything you do with a servant heart. Approach everything and meeting everybody where they stand as an equal. It's amazing. I mean, one thing that we all is common for us is we have an expiration date on this earth, and that is the great equalizer. And so I tend to like, and I know I've talked a lot here, but I pride myself on being a great listener. I enjoy listening to people, whatever they have to say, right? If that's somebody that's a friend that's going through a rough time, or they have something to give joy about. Their kid just graduated, kid just got married, had an anniversary, whatever the case may be. Take time and listen, and do that. You do that from a servant heart standpoint, and you learn a lot more by listening a lot more, and that comes with age and wisdom. I think but really, yeah, I think leading with a servant heart really guides everything I do. I can't imagine, I guess some people, and they're some people that are very inwardly focused. I've had some big things occur in my life, tragic losses and whatnot, and that really, those impacts weren't lost on me. And so it just reinforces, again, being a trustworthy person, being leading with empathy and having sympathy when you need to have it, and not positioning yourself in a way that it has to be pulled out of you, that it almost pours out of you. So that's what I would say.
Wow.
I always thought if you'd asked me years and years ago out of college, it would be money. And it's funny how that changes over time.
Yeah. Life shapes you that way. And isn't that really the bottom line of ROI? It's not the money, it's the impact that we make on the people that we touch with our services and with our lives.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's again, you look at HumanRx wellness. It was built to price access to these life-changing medications, and not the company still makes a healthy profit, but it doesn't. You don't have to price it so out of touch for folks where it's such a reach, and then you layer that in with the accessibility on telehealth and trying to make it easy and the Human RX Wellness website is very, very basic. It's composed to as opposed to like a Wellcore, very complex site. I built it to be very easy to navigate, and very simple on product offering. So we keep prices low. People order. That is something that makes me happy. That makes me happy. I like to see when those orders come through and people are telling their stories, and I get comments all the time about how it's life changed for them, and someone that struggled with weight loss for 20 years, and they would starve themselves to lose 6 pounds, and then only it would come back 2 weeks later. To see people get on these medications where weight loss is just a byproduct of really the core of what the medication is doing, right? It's regulating your A1C, your blood sugar, your cardiovascular issues are greatly reduced, your liver function. Now they're saying that there are studies that they're working through on depression, that the GLP-1s have a big impact on mental health. And so, it's just amazing. Those should not be priced for just the uber wealthy or the wealthy. Those should be available to everyone. And if it's a cash pay, they should at least try to get in reach financially for these folks. And then, making it accessible through a telehealth platform that you can access from your smartphone or from your computer at anywhere, anytime. And so those things are super important to me. And I think ultimately, Leah, that if we find ourselves in a long-term care facility or a memory care facility, it would be great and probably a bit ironic to be in one of those facilities and say, I helped build that is informing the care of all of these people. And when you look at facilities, there's something like 50,000 there's 50,000 facilities around the country, and each one of these facilities have anywhere from 200 to 4,000 beds. You start multiplying that number, and you think of the opportunity to reach out and make a difference in some of these people's lives, or all the people's lives, and the workers. And I mean, just if you can improve that experience and that outcome, man,
And the families. And the families of the people,
absolutely, absolutely, and you reduce that burden.
At the end of their life, you want nothing more than my cousin, who was like a mother to me, recently passed away. And that seeing her in at the end of her life and not really having a facility that gave her the dignity, like you mentioned in the beginning, and for me was so painful, not just for her, but for me as, like her daughter. That was very painful. So talk about the multiplier, it multiplies across the board, the impact that this can have on families and their lives.
And when you're in a palliative care facility or a kind of an end of life facility, the one thing that the family wants to know is constant updates. You want constant updates on where they are. If you can't be at their bedside, you want to have access to the notes and how they're feeling and what's going on. You want to know that. And today that really doesn't exist without picking up the phone and calling and having to get a call back or going up there physically. It's as we introduce these modules and these opportunities, you'll be able to get real-time updates. And so you eliminate the lag that naturally occurs when a human has to pick up and make that communication. Let AI prompt to notify the next of kin of any big developments or any little developments. As much as you want to be informed, you have access 24/7 to be informed. That changes the landscape. It changes the outcome, typically for how people, where you're so stressed or you're living in the unknown or you're waiting on that call back. Well, it eliminates a lot of that, right? It gives you immediate access to your loved one, and that's important. That can help change the atmosphere of those last days, and where they're always mixed with angst and sadness, sorrow, and if you can kind of eliminate a lot of the surprises, and you can be informed regularly, I think you have a better opportunity to prepare yourself for that end of lifetime. And a lot of times it's just people not knowing, they're not in the loop, and that's where a lot of angst meets in those facilities. And we can make that better. Fantastic.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to see what comes up next. Please let me know when it's available so that I can implement it for my clients.
And I'll tell any of your listeners out there, if they're investing in AI tech and health tech, to reach out to me. I would love to talk with them. We're finishing up seed round now. We're already forecasting for our A round. So would love to talk to anybody that's interested, would just like more information. If there's anybody out there that owns any of these long-term facilities or know someone that owns these skilled facilities that would like to come in and maybe be a pilot participant where we're beta testing components of the software, all of course HIPAA compliant and all signed business associate agreements with the covered entities just to be compliant. Would love to talk to them. They can reach me at Bill BILL at mind MIND -sync SYNC.ai. They can reach me at that email address. I'm happy to visit with them. And they can also reach me directly on my cell phone. I'm happy to share that. It's 214-934-2455. And then lastly, if anybody out there is interested in fixed rate pricing on GLP-1s, getting accessibility, it's a cash pay, easy, very simple. They can find that at HumanRxWellness.com.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Bill. Looking forward to getting this posted.
Thank you, Liat.